and I would literally draw a line in a bunker 10 feet long. And I would just go up and down the line, and where my leading edge of my club was hitting the line every single time. I'd do it left-handed. I'd do it right-handed. I'd do it both-handed. I'd do that for 10 minutes a day for a couple years. I can bottom out correctly every time. The secret to golf, I don't care if it's driver or chipping, is you need to be consistent with the bottom of your swing. If you are, you'll be a good player.
In audio.
Welcome everyone to the Accelerate Golf podcast, where we explore player improvement and the business of golf through conversations. I'm your host, Bikram Kapoor, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ed Schwent, the Director of Instruction at the Old Hickory Golf Club in St. Peters, Missouri. Now, Ed was a very phenomenal tournament player as well. In his younger days, he was one of the best amateurs, and then later on, a playing professional in the St. Louis, Missouri area. He has been the head coach of the St. Louis University golf team, both men's and women's. And he's always been on the best teachers list as listed by the Golf Digest for the last almost 20 years. So welcome, Ed.
Well, thanks. I appreciate being here.
Thank you. So typically, we start off by asking you about your golf journey. How did you get to where you are currently?
Well, I was lucky, like most people would tell you, I think. And I got into golf because my dad was a golfer. And we grew up fishing together all the time, not playing golf. I didn't play golf really until I got to college.
Okay.
And so, but we fished every weekend. And in the late 70s, there was an oil embargo and the gas prices went up. And my dad said, man, we can't afford to go fishing, driving 2 or 3 hours to go fishing someplace every weekend. And he goes, we're going to start playing golf. So I started playing golf. And I really didn't get into it till after college. I wasn't in the golf business. I had a business degree in college. And when I got out of college, I joined a club in St. Louis. And most of the great amateur players in our area were members at this golf club as well. And I got hooked. I could play pretty good. I was a pretty good athlete. And so even when I first started playing, I could shoot around 80 probably pretty regularly, pretty quick. And but I started playing with all these other really good players that played in tournaments all the time. And I just kept getting a little better and a little better and a little better. And after 2 or 3 years, I was pretty close to scratch and started to play competitive amateur golf. So I turned pro when I was 30.
Okay.
And I had to supplement trying to play with teaching. So I started teaching as well then. So I guess that was 36 years ago. And I've still been doing it. So it's been a great life. And I've met so many great people and been around so many great players. And so it's been wonderful for me.
That's a great story. And the part which really hits me is the fact that you were down to scratch in the first 2 to 3 years. I've been playing golf for a long time. I'm nowhere near scratch. So what is it about people like you who are kind of naturals? Did you get any formal instruction? Were you a natural athlete? Were you playing some other sports prior to golf? What helped you become scratch?
Yeah, I was a baseball player and a basketball player growing up. And so I was always able to hit something. And I could hit a baseball. I just couldn't throw very fast or run very fast. So I really wasn't a great player at all, but I could hit. And so golf, I was lucky. I always had a knack for chipping and pitching. I was always really good at that from the very beginning. And I didn't hit it very far or very good then, but I could hit it far enough and good enough to get close enough to chip and pitch pretty good. So that was probably the secret to it. I had a cousin that was a great amateur player that I caddied for at first a lot. And so I got to see a lot of great players play caddying with him. And I just started practicing. I literally hit balls every day for 10 years probably. And I did get some formal instruction, and I when I first started playing, I played from a very closed club face position, and so I tended to miss it way left every once in a while, and it took back then. That was before video was really prevalent, and of course there wasn't any launch monitors. And the lessons that I took, um, tried to solve my hook by moving my hips faster and my body faster and all that stuff. And nobody ever told me I had a closed club face. And when I finally learned I had a closed club face, it took me 3 or 4 months until I could get the club square at the top of my backswing. And once I did, it was life changing for me as a player because um, I was really straight, really accurate. I could really drive the ball great, and that's with the older ball and the older equipment. So nobody, if you carried it 250, 260 back then, you hit it a long ways.
Yeah.
But and I could hit it straight, and so I turned myself into a pretty good player. So
let's get deeper into that the insight or the transition where you went from, let's say, really good to professional level. That insight, which it sounds like you kind of dug it out of the dirt, so to speak, as they used to do back in the day before video and launch monitors. Tell me exactly what you did to get that insight about the closed club face. Did someone help you? And then did the fact that you were actually starting to teach other people help you in your quest to become a better player as well?
Yeah, to answer the second question first, when I first got into teaching, a lot of the older teaching professionals would say, "Oh man, that's bad for your game. You get to see all these bad swings every day, and it'll hurt your game watching these bad swings." But it was the opposite for me. Helping people improve. My philosophy as a teacher has always been that I would never have a student do any drill or try anything that I wouldn't do myself.
Okay.
And so because of that, the things that I worked on with my students, especially early on, were very basic things that I still do today, pretty basic things, just set up and swinging the club on the correct path and having a square club face. And I have a TrackMan and a simulator studio as well here at my facility. And so I've had TrackMan, gosh, now for maybe 10 years. I've learned a lot about the golf swing having people on TrackMan. But I've really realized with the launch monitors, and I think the industry as a whole has, how important the club face really is. The old PGA of America teaching model, had 9 different shot shapes, and the path influenced it a lot. And frankly, what we found out with launch monitors is that, especially with irons, the club face has a lot more to do with everything than the path does. And so if I can get somebody to really learn how to play from a square club face from start to finish, I think the path kind of takes care of itself, because they'll figure out where to start the ball once they get a correct club face. So
to me, if you are a competitive player, under pressure, bad things happen if your swing fundamentally has a lot of moving parts. there is a philosophy which says take out the variables in your golf swing, try to make everything as simple as possible. And to an engineering mind, it seems very logical. So is that something you agree with, to make it simpler, to have it handle pressure better?
Um, yes, the way I describe it to my students is you want a swing that has the fewest compensations in it as possible. There's a lot of ways to hit a golf ball. All you've got to do is get online and watch YouTube videos, and you'll see all different kind of ideas. Most of them are manipulations, in my opinion, and the best golf swings have the fewest manipulations.
Okay.
And simpler you keep it, the better. And frankly, I work off of basically four fundamentals. Setup fundamentals, which there's quite a few. But if we can swing on the correct plane with the shaft and understand that the plane's different with every club, that they're not made the same. So
Right.
I'm not an engineer by degree, but I have a very engineering mind. The model for the golf swing is the club. And if we can swing the club the way it's made, that's the simplest way to do it. And that's pretty much my philosophy on teaching is, you set up to the club. It tells you how to set up. There's four different factors, unless you're Bryson DeChambeau with single length, single lie angle irons. But, there's loft and length, and lie angle, and
Right.
then also forward lean. So, your 60-degree wedge has a lot of forward lean with the shaft, and your driver actually has negative lean where it's leaning back. And so the club tells you what your impact position should be by the way that it's made. And if I've been highly successful with adult students that are mid to high handicappers, just explaining how a golf club's made and what we're trying to do with it. And I tell my students to really focus on the club and not their body. If they set up correctly and they swing the club correctly, their body, in my opinion, for most people, responds pretty naturally.
Okay. So let's get into the setup fundamentals, because theoretically that should be one of the easiest things for someone to check.
Yeah, but the most boring for most people, so they neglect it pretty badly.
Right. And I've noticed a lot of coaches say that 5-minute mirror practice, just looking at yourself setting up to a ball in front of a mirror every day, can really help you, rather than beating thousands of balls on the range. So if I were a brand new student coming to you, and I knew nothing about golf, what would you tell me with respect to the setup?
Well, a few things. I'm in the process of writing a book. In that book, I will state that I think the most important fundamental in golf is being the correct distance away from the ball.
Okay.
It's even more important than how you hold the club. And I'm not diminishing how important grip is, but I believe that distance away is probably the most important fundamental. And and it's very difficult to achieve for a variety of reasons, because uneven lies can affect what distance away you should be. You would be farther away from the ball with the ball above your feet. You'd be closer to it with the ball below your feet. But assuming a level lie, it's difficult for most people. They just look at the ball and they get a comfortable distance away. That's what I found. I mean, I've
Okay.
given 40,000 lessons, and I rarely see somebody the correct distance away from the ball. On my YouTube channel, I get a lot of positive things, and I get a few negative things because probably my opinion on distance away from the ball is the majority of the players that I see are too close to the ball.
Okay.
driver. And the trend is such, even at the professional level, that players are getting farther and farther away from the ball because it's more powerful, the more room you have to swing. And then when I was growing up, almost every instructor would tell you that you can't stand too close to the ball. That was the common
I've
thought.
heard that too.
Yes. And I think that has hurt more people than it's helped. Do I think at the elite level, a lot of players stand pretty close to it and have a very upright swing? Yes, I do. And are they great because of it? Well, maybe, but I don't have many students that can get their hands as high at the top of their backswing that Scotty Scheffler can or Justin Thomas can. They don't have the strength and they don't have the flexibility. And unless you can get your hands in a really high position on the backswing, you're probably better off a little farther away from the ball than close. And so I spend a lot of time on distance away from the ball. And I think you should be the same distance from the grip end with every club. And then what changes is the club head end as the shafts get longer and flatter as you go through the set. So
Okay, so
that's what I find. And before I go on and you ask another question, I want to address the mirror question.
okay,
Okay, if that's okay.
absolutely.
Because I use mirrors a lot and I show students how to practice in a mirror a lot. And that's how I learned to get a square club face at the top of my backswing, because I learned what it should look like and I practiced in a mirror every day until I could do it without thinking about it. And I think mirror work is probably the most important part. If somebody wants to be a better player, practice in a mirror. Video tells you what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right, but it does not teach you how to change it. And if you'll learn to practice in a mirror, with just a few basic things, you can work on takeaway and path and club face and setup in the mirror. And it's, in my opinion, is a neglected part of golf instruction and golf practice for most players these days, because they're dependent on their iPhones and they're just taking video and they see the same mistake they're making every time, but they never really fix it. And mirror work fixes it.
That's a great point. And just going a little bit further into the mirror work, you said something before you started on the mirrors, that every club, from the butt end of the club to your body, should be the same distance.
Yeah, for a full swing, yes.
And I presume that's one of the things you are checking when you are setting up in front of a mirror. So is it from the belt buckle to the butt end?
It is. And that's where I believe the club should point at address, is at a player's belt buckle for men. Our belt buckle's an inch below our belly button.
Right.
And so for the women out there, their belt buckle's usually an inch or two above their belly button. And so for the ladies, they need to point it below their belly button. So
Okay.
men, right at the belt buckle is a pretty good place. And I challenge anybody to watch any PGA Tour event and just watch them from the down the line camera angle, and you'll see almost all of them at address the club points at their belt buckle. And then they have maybe 6 to 8 inches between the end of the grip and the belt buckle, and that's a pretty good guideline. It varies a little. Everybody's different. That's one thing. I don't have a method teaching. Some guys have longer arms and some guys have shorter arms, and that distance away is a preference and a personal thing. But if a player can find their best place, they'll have much more success. I mean, everybody that comes to me, every instructor will tell you, when you ask them what they need to do to improve, they all say, I need to be more consistent. And I tell them they're consistent, but it's just producing inconsistent results with what and but the one thing I find inconsistency in a lot is setup distance away from the ball. One time they're too far, one time they're too close. Depending on the club, they might be too far or too close. And as a result, how can you ever work on a path on a golf swing if your setup's not correct and your distance away from the ball is not consistent?
I wanted to mention that this show is brought to you by QSchool Sports, a technology company that offers thoughtfully designed point of sale, bookings, payments, omni-channel retail, and customer management software that accelerates your business growth. Visit qschoolsports.com for more information. Thank you.
So today there are so many shops which offer custom fitting, and in that custom fitting session, this is one of the checkpoints which should be one of the key checkpoints for the success or the I would say the accuracy of the fit. So
Uh,
do you see a lot of people coming to you with maybe too upright lie angles, or something is wrong with the way somebody fit them the club, and now they're suddenly too close or too far away?
yes, frankly, it's gotten better in the last 10 years. I will say that from a club fitting point of view. But especially if you go back 10 or 20 years ago, most people were playing with irons that were too upright for them. And the reason they get fit upright is because they have outside in over the top club path, and that always steepens the shaft on the way down. And so if you're getting fit on a lie board that's marking the sole of the club, it's always going to tell you that you need upright clubs. And so then they get really upright clubs, and now the butt of the club points at their chin instead of their belt buckle when it's
Right.
correctly. Um, you know, I haven't seen the stat recently in the last couple of years, but if you look on tour, probably 90% of the tour players are somewhere between 1 degree flat and 1 degree upright. They're almost playing with standard lie angle clubs, almost everybody, no matter how tall they are. And I tell beginners um, really not to get fit early on. Get standard lie angle clubs and learn how to use them correctly, and you'll probably be better off in the long run.
That makes sense, actually, because getting fit too early in the process, when you are changing so many things in your swing as you learn, so it's a kind of a moving target. Getting too late is not bad, because by that time you would already established some kind of a repeatable baseline swing,
Absolutely.
and and then hopefully the fitter is going to do a good job and giving you the right shaft specs and so on, because I feel coming down to the club level, the shaft itself becomes important, the choice of shaft to fit your body and your strength, correct?
Absolutely. Especially with the longer clubs. Yes.
Okay.
And, there's two schools of thought on club fitting. You can either be fit dynamically, that's while you're swinging and seeing what your lie angle is at impact. Or the other school of thought is static fitting, which would fit you at address to where the sub club soles correctly, points in the right place, you're the right distance away. I'm not sure which is best. Maybe for somebody that's played a long time and they're not going to change much ever, dynamically is better. But for somebody that's really looking to make swing changes to improve, they may be better off getting fit statically so that at address the club fits them correctly. So
That makes sense as well. So you started off by saying the distance from the ball is one of the main mistakes you see in people's setups. What
yes.
about ball position relative to the center of your stance?
another interesting thing, I tell people I'm not sure ball position is a fundamental, because by definition, a fundamental would mean every great player does it exactly like this. Okay.
Right.
And so there's so many different positions that the best players play from. There's some that play everything off their lead shoulder, every club. There's some that play everything in the middle of their stance. And it does depend on their body and their swing. The more rotary somebody is with not very much lateral motion, the more the ball should be towards the middle. And the more lateral motion somebody might get, the more it should be farther forward. The mistake I see generally with most players, and I'm talking in the 10 to 20 handicap range, is that with driver, they have the ball too far forward.
Okay.
Their shoulders are open at address. Because if they're right-handed and it's too far forward and they reach forward with their right arm to get to the ball, it always makes their shoulders point left, and then they're set up to slice it right from the very beginning. So once I get their shoulders, show them how square their shoulders should be at address, then they realize the ball's left of their foot, and then they can bring the ball back, and they usually get quite a bit of success just from a ball position change.
And you said something really important, which I just wanted to reiterate to our listeners, and that is the ball position is actually dependent on the type of swing, the extent of rotary motion or lateral slide you have. And as a player, you have to figure it out for yourself, is the message I'm hearing from you, Ed, right?
Yes, that's correct. And, I tell students all the time, if you ever go to a PGA Tour event, you go to the driving range and watch them practice, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They've always got alignment sticks down on the ground, and they've got an alignment stick pointing at the ball, and they got alignment stick on their target line and parallel to their target line. And they're experimenting with ball position often on a day-to-day basis. I think tour players probably vary their ball position more than most people realize, because they don't have time. If they've got to say they play on Friday and they're playing Friday afternoon, so they're getting done at 7 p.m, and they're going to make the cut, but just barely. So they're teeing off at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Right.
And they've been hooking it all day. Okay. Well, they're going to go to the driving range and they're going to figure out a ball position where they can't hook it. They're not really going to change their swing because they don't have enough time to practice if they're trying to make a swing change. But they're going to experiment with ball position to where they can get the ball in a place that it makes it more difficult to hook it or fade it if that's what they did all day. So they will experiment with ball position on a daily basis, depending on what their ball flight is.
That's so interesting, Ed. This, I never realized the importance of doing that, where you don't change the motion which you have grooved over the years, the swing, but temporarily you could just experiment with the ball position just to get the job done for your competitive round the next day. That's amazing. That's a great insight.
Well, thanks. It's just what number you shoot. It has nothing to do. The best players shoot low scores, and all they're trying to do is find their golf ball after they hit it. So you would be amazed, really. And the reason it changes is, we're human beings. You talked about lateral versus rotary. Well, say somebody's normally very rotary, but man, maybe they tweak their hip or they tweak their back and they're just not moving exactly the same way today as they normally do.
Right.
It's gonna affect their ball flight if they get more lateral motion because they're hurt. And so they're going to figure out what they've got to do to hit an acceptable shot before they play the next day. And that happens a lot more. That's more common than most people would ever believe, I would tell you.
And also, as you age as a golfer and you lose a little bit of your strength and flexibility, I guess the same effect is probably happening as well, where you could potentially compensate a little bit by figuring out the right ball position for what you have at that point in time.
Absolutely. I'm 66 years old now, and I can't hit it near as far as I used to. But in my younger days, I had quite a bit of lateral motion, and I had quite a bit of ground force where I would jump, and back then you were told that was terrible, you want your feet on the ground the whole time.
Yeah.
And you don't want any lateral motion. But I played the ball quite far forward. I'd play almost everything in my game when I was a competitive player, pretty much off my left breast. And now I play almost everything much closer to the middle because I don't have the strength in my legs and my body to make the same golf swing that I did, 35 years ago. So, yep.
Right. Is there anything else in the setup piece which we've missed you would like to cover, Ed?
Well, it's just your basics, grip, stance, and posture. But if you're the correct distance from the ball and you lean from the hips, tilt from the hips forward, you'll be in the correct posture for you.
Okay.
I ideally, with a competitive player that I'd work with, I like seeing the spine angle and the shaft angle almost on a 90-degree angle. And then one of the simplest ways to swing on plane is just to keep the shaft 90 degrees to your spine the whole time. Pretty simple concept, but pretty effective if nobody's ever thought about that.
I've never, heard it put that way, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah. But it's a pretty good way to get on the right path and the right plane. If you're set up with your spine and your club 90 degrees and you swing the club 90 degrees around it, it's pretty good golf swing.
Right.
And so, but if, I see a lot of people that are really tall and the club's like this, and I see a lot of people bent over and the club's like this, and that makes it pretty difficult to really have a swing without compensation. So like we talked about earlier, but alignment definitely, when I have a young player, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old that just loves to play and loves to practice and wants to be good, I teach them how to set up and how to aim. And I tell them, you just keep hitting balls till it goes where you're aiming and you'll probably end up with a pretty good golf swing. So, but most people aren't patient enough to do that. But if somebody out there's got a 12 or 13-year-old kid that loves to practice, you just make sure he's got a stick on the ground pointing at the flag he's wanting to go to. Make sure he's parallel left of it if he's right-handed. And tell him to keep hitting balls till it goes to the flag. And once it does, he's probably doing things right.
All right. So once we have the right setup, now, again, for the 12, 13-year-old kid you just talked about, what do you say to him with respect to how to swing the golf club in a repeatable way? I know getting too technical at that age probably is counterproductive. So how do you handle that conversation? What do you say to these kids?
I've used a training aid, I believe, since 1992. I started using it in my lessons in 1995. There's a really good video on my YouTube channel that shows you how to make one and practice with it, but it's simply a piece of PVC pipe and 2 flashlights in it. And with all young players, that's the first thing that I show them, is that the definition of swing plane, in my opinion, Homer Kelly's opinion in the golf machine too, by the way, is that the shaft should point at the target line during your swing.
Okay.
With these flashlights, you can see, you put a line on the floor and you can see the lights. The club head end light will point going back, and when your hands hinge, the flashlight should point at the target line, and it should go all the way through. It swings the club in a circle around you. And I've showed it to thousands of players, and I've probably had over 1,000 high school golfers that played golf in college. And they all got there because they started off as kids swinging this flashlight stick.
So it's a good segue to talk about your YouTube channel. So it's a very popular YouTube channel, and I stumbled upon it, and that's why I got hooked onto your YouTube channel. It's called the Golf Sensei.
Done it for 2 years. I'm partners with a guy named Patrick Conley in it, and he's had quite a few of the videos, and he's the brains behind it. He's the editor and the photographer and all that. All I do is talk. So he's really the secret to success, but it's been great. We've got 45,000 subscribers now, and it's growing 2,000 or 3,000 a month. So
yes, and I'm one of them, by the way. And so, and I'm gonna dig up that flashlight video and put a link
yeah,
for the
dude,
listeners.
it has about 300,000 views. It costs about $35 to make this training aid. Have people read the comments, that you can see how many people it's helped. And if you just go to the Golf Sensei flashlight, it'll come right up. I think we sold Maglite out of lights when we first released the video. So
Okay. All right. So now coming back to the swing, what's the next thing people aspire for? Now they can figure out how to swing the club. For a person like me, the next question definitely is, how do I hit the ball further?
well, I say there's always a compromise between distance and direction. So yes, I mean, at some point, most people would try to hit it too hard to where it hurts their centerness of contact.
Okay.
But distance is important, and it's especially at the competitive level today. That if you can't fly at 280, 290 yards as a male, I mean, you're not competitive, or more. And it's just going to keep getting longer as we just keep getting better athletes playing the game. I think the increase in distance isn't the ball and the clubs as much as it is the golfer. So I think the clubs make a difference and the ball makes a difference, obviously, but I sure can't hit it as far as Bryson. I could play the same ball and the same club. So
Right. And that was my question. What I see is that distance, there are two buckets of distance in golf. One is the competitive level distance, where if you hit it 280, you're considered short.
yeah.
Then there's the rest of humanity who's hitting like 200 to 230 to 250 max. Now, how do we go from this shorter bucket to the longer bucket?
I think some of that's God-given talent. I told you I played baseball. Well, gosh, I couldn't throw a baseball 70 miles an hour. I had perfect throwing technique, but I didn't have the arm speed to throw at 100 miles an hour. Most recreational players are not swinging the club on an efficient plane or an efficient path to begin with. And they're not using their arms and their elbows and their hands and their wrists correctly. And so that's what I would tell most people is really learn how to mechanically swing a golf club correctly with your arms and your hands and on the correct plane. Most people would gain 15 to 30 yards alone doing that without being faster or stronger. With all the stuff these days talking about ground reaction forces and all that, the elite players are doing these things, and they're doing exercises to improve that. But I would say for the average guy, he needs to still work on more basic golf swing fundamentals, and he would achieve more distance sooner going that route than trying to do what the elite players are doing, trying to jump off the ground or turn their hips faster. Frankly, I find most higher handicap players, they're not in the correct sequence. They're actually swinging their shoulders and their hips faster than they're swinging the club in their arms, and that's giving them more problem. And they're trying to go faster with their hips, and that's probably the worst mistake I see with slicers that are high handicap golfers is they're using their body too much and their arms and hands not enough.
And I remember watching a video where you have this drill where you put the butt end of the club in your belly button and you rotate to get the sense of the correct motion in the golf swing. So just to get the listener a better picture of what the correct sequence should look like, how would you articulate the right swing sequence for a golfer?
That's a $1 million question there.
10 million if you win the tour championship.
There you go. So earlier I didn't complete it. I try to get people to set up correctly, swing on the correct path, keep the club face square. And then I think the best players keep the club in front of them while they're swinging. It's the hardest thing to learn to do for most people. Okay. But so that belly button drill that you described a minute ago, that's really the purpose of that, is to get a sense for that is my body is turning, this club is staying in front of my chest, the handle and the head. And see, most people that slice the ball, and I talk about slicing a lot because that's 90% of the people that play are slicers. They think they have an open club face at impact. And frankly, most of them don't. It's pretty square. But the club's behind them, where the handle's too far in front of the head at impact, and therefore the face points to the right, but it's really not open in their hands or their grip.
Okay.
And most people get the club behind them on the takeaway. So I've been very successful. I've got a drill where you put your bottom hand across the club and learn to turn this way and keep it in front of you. Most people roll their forearms at the very beginning as they take the club back, and that's a killer. Once it gets behind you on the takeaway, it can never catch up. And the people that come over the top of it, it's really their setup and their backswing, which is dictating what they do on their downswing. Once the arms roll and the club's behind and too flat on the takeaway, well, the only way to make contact is to come over the top of it. And so unless they can fix their setup fundamentals and their takeaway fundamentals, they really can't correct the downswing. And everybody's trying to, and most people that know they're swinging outside in actually think the way to not is to go more inside on the takeaway, and that's the exact opposite of what they should. The more they go in, the more they come over on the way down. So it's a catch-22.
Yeah, and it sounds like rolling the left forearm, especially as you take away the club, as you start the backswing, it's unanimous. Almost every top level teacher says that is the worst thing you can do to start your golf swing, is to roll your left forearm. I've noticed that in younger players, because they're not as strong as, and some of these clubs can get heavy for a younger player, they start rolling their forearm just to get control over the club face. And then you got to teach them to grow out of that, correct?
Well, you do, but boy, once it becomes ingrained as a habit, it's very difficult to change. And, we talked about trying to not have any compensations. Well, for the players that roll going back, they better roll going forward, or it'll never catch up. And so, that's where you see all these drills online. Bowing your wrist and doing the motorcycle drill.
Right.
Well, compensation. You only have to do that if you're incorrect on the backswing.
And rolling the left forearm also impacts you when you're chipping and pitching.
Absolutely.
And you had mentioned early on that you were a great chipper and that you had a phenomenal short game when you started off. And
Yes.
that's kind of what got you to a good level. And then from there, you figured out the swing and became even better. So, from a short game perspective, how did you get to be that good? And what are some of the things, the fundamentals you would advocate for a new player to understand?
Good was relative, by the way, when I started. So, I mean, by most standard players, they would say it was really good. I just had one shot back then, and it was a pretty high, soft shot, but I hit it every time from everywhere, and I knew how far it was going to roll. So, I do think it's important for the average player to have a very standard basic shot, and you should probably be able to use it 75-80% of the time. So I think too many people, look at short game and they say, well, I got a lot of greens, so I'm going to chip and run this one, and I'm going to flop this next one. I think they have too many shots, and they'd be better off if they just had one shot that they trusted all the time, and then learned a couple specialty shots for extreme situations. So I think too many people try to hit what they think the correct shot is instead of the shot that they know that they can hit. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I would tell you about short game, I'm in Missouri and have lived here all my life just about. And with our grass these days, zoysia fairways and fescue bluegrass rough, you really have to play with your most lofted clubs most of the time, short game wise.
Okay.
The other thing that's so confusing for most players is I always say, if you're reading a book or a magazine article or a YouTube video, kind of figure out where the guy's from. Because if he's in Florida or Texas or Southern California, the way he's telling you to chip and pitch may not be the best way to do it in Missouri, and then vice versa. The way I would show people to chip and pitch here probably is not the best way to do it in Florida and Texas and Southern California. They hit a lot more lower lofted clubs and chip and roll it a lot more down there. And
Yeah.
so that's one thing about short game that's difficult, is there's so many different methods. And so, but I tell most people early on that if you can get pretty good with your gap wedge or your sand wedge, or if you're really a physically strong person, L wedge, 60-degree wedge, those are the ones to really learn how to use correctly, because they should be the best clubs. They have more loft, steeper shaft angles, shorter shafts, heavier head weight to get the club through the rough.
Right.
Those clubs are designed for these shots, and so if we learn how to use them correctly, you'll be more successful. Now, that being said, I'll add one thing. I do think when it comes to short game, people don't work on hand-eye coordination stuff enough.
Okay.
And I was taught to learn to chip, and chipping especially, I was taught to learn in a bunker. And I would literally draw a line in a bunker 10 feet long. And I would just go up and down the line, and where my leading edge of my club was hitting the line every single time. I'd do it left-handed. I'd do it right-handed. I'd do it both-handed. I'd do that for 10 minutes a day for a couple years. I can bottom out correctly every time. The secret to golf, I don't care if it's driver or chipping, is you need to be consistent with the bottom of your swing. If you are, you'll be a good player.
That's an excellent point. And I remember watching one of Bryson DeChambeau's videos where he was working with Rick Shields, who's a big YouTube personality as well. And Rick was complaining about the fact that he always needed a perfect lie in the fairway to hit a good shot. And Bryson did exactly the drill you just mentioned. He drew a line in the bunker, made made him hit some shots, and figured out that he was very inconsistent in the way his club was bottoming out.
Mm-hmm.
So the perfect lie was giving him some more margin for error. That's all it was doing.
Yes, sir.
Just compensating for his lack of. I mean, he's a pretty good player, Rick, but he just couldn't get the bottom exactly where he wanted when he wanted it, and that drill exposed it right away.
Yep, that's a great drill. So recommend it for everybody, and it's a great way to practice bunker shots. Um, you open the face or lean the club back so you hit the bounce, but then the ball just goes 2 inches in front of the line, and all you try to do is hit the line as well. Almost everybody that I give a bunker lesson to, when I do the line drill in the sand, they usually hit 6 inches behind the line. Almost everybody hits 6, 7, 8 inches behind the ball, and they think they're hitting an inch or two behind it. But until you draw the line and you say, "Do you see where your divot's at?" They have no idea where the bottom of their swing is. And really, if you can bottom out correctly, you can play this game. I don't care what your swing looks like. If you bottom out correctly, you're at least going to make good contact every time, and it may curve a lot one way or the other, and you might have to aim left or aim right. But boy, if you can bottom out, you can play.
So just building on that concept, bottoming out and controlling the bottom of the swing. How do you do that? Is it with using your body weight or the pressure shift? How do you accomplish that as a player?
Well, it's two things. It is weight distribution. So especially for people chipping and pitching on very short shots, I like them to have their feet really close together so that their weight can't shift to one side or the other very much. The wider you get your feet, if your weight's on your back foot too much, you're always going to bottom out behind the ball too much. And so, do I think that the best players at impact with irons and driver and everything are on their lead leg almost completely? Yes. And if you're consistently on your lead leg at impact, it should help you control the bottom of your swing more effectively. But the path of the club also dictates where the bottom of the swing is. And I show it with a hula hoop. You can angle it back and forth. If you swing perfectly on plane, like the flashlight drill, you'll bottom out in the same place every time. Once that swing gets too steep, it always bottoms out farther forward. That's why people tend to play the ball position too far forward. Okay. Or if their swing's inside out too much, well, then they'll always bottom out behind the ball. And I see those players with the ball too far back in their stance because that's where at least they can hit it, but they can't hit it straight from there. It'll always block right.
And I remember a video on your channel where you're working with a collegiate woman golfer, and she's trying to hit a 3-wood, and her swing looks perfect. And you quickly zero into the fact that she's swinging maybe too much into out.
Correct.
And she just needed to straighten her swing a little bit to get better contact. Which kind of builds up upon what you were saying, that it's the path as well as the weight where you got to figure it out on what's happening with respect to the club bottoming out, correct?
That's correct. And I would tell you, the higher a player's handicap is, probably they're making a big path mistake that's causing their bottoming out issues, much more so than their weight. Okay. Now, as the player gets better and better and better and better, it could be a little bit more weight transfer related.
Okay.
It's generally always somewhat path related almost in every case. And that for most players that are having trouble hitting fat and thin shots, that's the first thing that I would look at is try to get somebody to help you with your path.
As we come up into the end of our conversation, we've covered the setup basics quite a bit. We've covered the swing basics quite a bit. We've talked about short game. Is there anything else you would like to mention to our listeners with respect to either improving themselves or understanding the swing better?
Sure. Especially for competitive players, but for anybody, even if you're just playing in D flight in your club championship, I think most players have too high of expectations, and they don't realize what good is. I'll give you an example. I've spent my whole life learning to play golf and learning how to help people play better. One of the things that helped me, I met two guys early on in the late 80s. I met Bob Rotella and Dave Pells. And they probably helped. I couldn't afford to go to a sports psychologist. Shoot, I couldn't afford range balls at one time. I had a shag bag and went to the softball field. So, but I could read a book. I could afford a book and read. And so I've probably got 2,000 books in my golf library at home.
Wow.
Dave Pells, in the late 80s, I believe, wrote a book called Putt Like the Pros. And in there, he did a study for several years of what the percentage was on tour from 15 feet, 20 feet, 6 feet. I had quite a temper as a young player, like most young players. And when I missed a 6-foot putt, I was pretty pissed off. And when I found out that back then the tour players only made 50% from 6 feet, it was like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. I started making more than my share because all I tried to do was read it correctly and hit a good putt. If it went in, it went in. I knew I had a 50-50 chance.
Wow.
Instead of thinking I needed to make 90% of them. And so I didn't know what good was. I thought I was supposed to make 90%. And then I realized I wasn't really that good at chipper because I was chipping it to 6 feet instead of 3 feet. Because at 3 feet, I can make them all. And so, you have to know what good is. And that's what I would tell somebody. Look at the tour stats. But there's Decade Golf. Scott Fawcett has great stuff. He has the tour averages from every yardage from the fairway, every 10 yards. I believe from 100 yards, they only average like 2.9 shots to get in the hole. So they're not birdieing every hole when they got a wedge in their hand. They're making par almost all the time. And so understand what good is and don't have too high of expectations. I tell my competitive players, the only thing you can do is try to hit each shot as good as you can hit it. Wherever it goes, go find it. Try to hit that shot, no matter where it is, as good as you can hit it. And just keep doing that. When you get done, add up your score. And that's the way to play golf.
That's great advice, Ed. I hope our listeners take that lesson to heart because golf is supposed to be a fun game. You don't pay money to have a miserable day on the course. Set your expectations right. Of course, watch the Golf Sensei YouTube channel to get better as well and practice. But that was a wonderful note on the philosophy and a positive mindset while on the course. Thanks for that, Ed.
Oh, you're welcome. It sure has been a pleasure being with you.
Same here, Ed. And I think we need a follow-up session in the future as well. But for today, for our listeners, that's a wrap for today. Thank you for listening.